Hi, and welcome to another week's Tips for AI Trailblazers. I'm Kathleen Perley, your host and founder of Demystify. This week, we're going to be utilizing a different tool, and we're going to be focusing on Gemini. I feel like Google has not been getting the attention it deserves and has some really great chops when it comes to doing research. I also have Pat on the phone and the video with us today as well. So you'll be seeing a live demo with Pat, and we'll kind of be talking through how I use Gemini Advanced and their 1.5 Pro with research to do some deep diving on all the chatter around DeepSeek. I know you thought you might be able to get away with one more day of no DeepSeek talk, and there's tons of other AI news that's happening outside of this, but wanted to show you how I use a tool to navigate and understand all the things that are happening around DeepSeek. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen, and Pat's gonna ask questions and kind of see this live in terms of how I do this as well.
And just to be honest to the audience, I have read maybe a paragraph of an article on DeepSeek. I've been too busy doing some other stuff. So this is a great learning experience for me as well. So thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, so this is Gemini. And so I've just logged in to my Gemini account. You do have to pay for it to get access to deep research. So when you see it, similar to what you would experience on ChatGPT, if that's kind of more of your preference and what you use. So you just log into 1.5 Pro with deep research. So you select that model and you kind of pose the question. So I want to understand the news around DeepSeek R1 model and what it really means for the tech space and business leaders overall. I also want to focus heavily on the findings. Sorry, I always typing. Hopefully one day AI can take over typing for me because I stink at it. And from Hugging Face, replication model. And I'm going to put in this link to Hugging Face. So Hugging Face is a kind of a platform where you can access a lot of the open source models. Hugging Face DeepSeek being one of them. They actually worked on recreating or trying to replicate the DeepSeek model. And they've just published their findings. So want that to be included in the research. So we'll press send. It will take a few seconds to kind of pull this together, as it does require some thinking. So, you know, Pat and I were talking about kind of when we think about AI, we have these different scaling laws. So we had that one of the main scaling laws was the more power and more computing power and the more data you throw out these models, the better it gets. More recently, and some of the more research that's coming out, is actually the more time that you give these models to think, the better they perform. So what it does is it will actually give you, so this is giving us a strategy in terms of how they want to do the research. So it'll give us that information. You can edit the plan if you want to, and say, add some research on what tech leaders are also saying in the space from the frontier models. So we're going to add that in. So it'll revise the research plan. So think about this as like you almost have, obviously I teach at Rice. I don't have a dedicated graduate assistant, but I do have a TA. So think about it, it's like almost like you talk to your TA about what you're wanting to do research on, and they develop a plan for you that you review, and then they execute it. So this is kind of thinking about it, having a grad student at your fingertips to help you do this very quickly. And as we talked about earlier, it does take some time to do go through the research. So it will go through this process for it to perform really well. Obviously, there's a little bit more latency or time between kind of your inputs and the outputs, but it's still really impressive. So you see the first step that it does is it actually will start pulling in all of the research, all the resources that it's gathering its information. You can specify only want to use certain types of scholarly articles, things of that nature. For this purpose, we kind of kept it more open-ended. It's got about 36 websites that it's researching and gathering the information. And this does take, as I mentioned, a little bit of time. And hopefully we'll see this come through. If not, what I'm going to do is actually we're going to let this continue to render. And I'm going to show you, I did this earlier with the DeepSeek model. This was yesterday. So this is a slightly different aspect or kind of a rendering, but very similar request. But this is more high level and understanding kind of the infrastructure behind the efficiencies, like how they were able to build a performing good model that was able to even compete with O1 and Sonnet. So if we look over here, this is the one I did yesterday. It will actually give you your research. These tend to be a bit more lengthy. I got a question yesterday from one of my students, like, how does this compare to Perplexity? And it does a great job from a Perplexity perspective, but it isn't as in-depth. So this is a lot more in-depth. And the other things, it gives you the full list of websites that you research. So this is kind of what you see from an output perspective. And then you can ask additional questions to the kind of research assistant if you don't see it outlined in the initial output. So you can say, was NVIDIA stock overpriced or overvalued? And then it'll give you some references. And if you want to learn more, it actually will link to the sources where it's pulling that information. And it gives you a pretty in-depth analysis on that. So it's not brief by any means, but we're working with an AI research agent, if you will. So any grad student, any research assistant is never brief when you ask them a question. So don't expect that from here either. So let's go back. Yeah.
You've got all the sources listed on the right there. Is there a way, they all look actually just on quick view, like reputable sources that anybody would use. But is there a way to take some of those sources out in case it pulls in some rogue site that you're just like, take this one out? I'm guessing you could probably write a prompt for it.
Yeah, so you just say, I want to be sure we're only referencing. You typically would want to do that in the research page when you're phase, when you're asking it initially. Reputable. I can't spell this morning. Caffeine addiction.
It's a tough word. It's a tough word.
But I will tell you, the AI does not care that I'm dyslexic and I cannot spell, and thank God for that. I should call my second grade teacher and tell her, remember when I used to carry around a dictionary because I couldn't spell anything? No one cares anymore. I have computers and models that understand what I'm trying to say anyway. So it'll kind of repeat that. Let's go back to the other one. While this kind of loads, it might take a few minutes. So it's telling us where it's pulling its Hacker News, AP News, Morningstar, Data Camp. It'll continue to be more mindful of the content that it's providing. And it made some edits to here. It looked like as we kind of went through that. It didn't change the number of sites researched, so it looks like it's still looking at those. So I think if you want to specify at the very beginning, that is probably the best. Let's go to, let's see, recent.
See if this loaded here.
It's loaded. Yeah, so this is the 31 results. It's still analyzing. So this does take some time. So typically when I do this, I'll kind of start it and then go on to another project or task. But one of the other things I really like about this, and we can go to another kind of research I had it do on AGI, AGI predictions, if you will, is you can actually have it open in Docs. So this is where you kind of see that compatibility with its full work space in terms of being able to pull things over. Let's open in Docs. Oh, it might have my incognito window open and it's blocking it. Okay, there it goes. So all the hatred that you might have towards like the pound sign or the hash sign and some of the formatting issues when you copy and paste things from an AI tool to a Word doc is gone. It has found a way to do this very cleanly, which is a huge win.
Well, that's great. I spend so much time doing find and replace when I with the asterisks and whatnot. So that's good. That's good to know. One less step to do when you're putting a research paper together.
Yeah, so this is kind of giving you the different scenarios and timelines for, this is around artificial general intelligence, which I think, the DeepSeek advancements in terms of how the models are trained and the efficiencies that they've identified do a great job of getting us closer to AGI faster. So that's why kind of these two have come pretty quickly for me. But then it also will give you its works cited in a nice, like kind of like MLA-esque format that you typically had to do in high school. I don't know if it is actually MLA because I can't remember the last time I used an MLA for citations.
So I have being an English major, that actually looks fairly correct. It's pretty standard. So it does, just first glance, I might have to review my notes, but yeah, that's typically what you want. Just the title, the date, who wrote it, and then a link to the source. So pretty good.
So this is the research tool. So if you have anything that you're working on, whether it's, even think about this, right? I just got a chat from one of my mom friends, it was blowing up the pre-K3 mom group on summer camp activities for her kids. And I was like, I do not have time for this at all. This would be a great research project for deep research, right? So not outside of just work, right? You can use it for life, right? Like, what camps are available for 4-year-olds in Houston this summer? And can you give me an outline that looks like this and do all this research and give me all the sites, tell me the costs, the dates, the times, so that I can quickly figure out what camp my daughter goes to, so that she's not with me all day, every day this summer.
Well, if you've got, a link to your park district's PDF available, I know they put these out every season. You can easily link to that, dump it right in here, tell it what your kid likes, and it'll find those camps costs and everything that Kathleen just talked about. So yeah, this is pretty slick.
This is really slick. And so this is the one that we started the video on. So this is the research that it pulled for me. It talks specifically about Hugging Face Open R1 project that they did to reconstruct it. It has several goals. It talks about that. They're trying to build out the missing pieces. Obviously, DeepSeek is releasing a lot of it, but there's some holes. So we're trying to kind of figure that out in terms of what was done specifically. A lot of this has to do with how they're storing and recalling memory and this mixture of expert architecture, as well as something really interesting where it actually has the model like self-teach and self-improve itself, which is really, really fascinating. And so it's a great paper. I'll probably dig into this a little bit more. And obviously you still need that human touch of bringing your own experience to the table to kind of push the model to talk about certain areas. But this is a great starting off point. And look, it even pulled in your benchmarks that you can export to sheets. I've done this, which is really helpful. And then it gives me a list of all of the tech leaders. I think it's kind of interesting that we also have Donald Trump as a tech leader now in here, but obviously somebody important I would want to know who's kind of talking about this, as well as some of ByteDance and legal professionals. So it's giving you a little bit of a source on what's being said. And if you want to dig into any one of these in particular, you will be able to click on this and it'll give you the sources from there. Okay. So
Kathleen, one last question. I'll just address the elephant in the room. For any TAs out there, are their jobs at risk with this tool?
Becky, I want you to put down this video. Becky is my TA at the graduate level. She is amazing. I love Becky. Do not think that this replaces you in any way, shape, or form, because you know what we get that AI research can't do for me is countless requests of students saying, I am sick, or I have to leave early for swim team practice, or I have a question about what you really mean about this assignment and how I should do it, and helping grade. So Becky, please do not see this as an end in sight for you, because I am so grateful to have you and Luis, who's my faculty support person, on my side, helping me navigate all the kind of bureaucracy of being a professor and all the forms and compliance things I'm supposed to do on a regular basis, and making sure I don't forget to do those things. So no, please do not see this as a replacement. But maybe these TAs now have a tool that they can get their job done a little bit faster.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was getting at. I just want to throw that out there because I know that's one of the questions I get asked, you get asked a lot, we get asked together, like, our jobs in jeopardy. And like, no, but start using these tools because it'll make you more efficient and better at your job.
Exactly, right? I tell my students all the time, a person who has AI skills is more valuable than a person alone.
Yep.
And a person with AI skills is, quite frankly, in most business leaders' minds, far more valuable than just AI alone. So this is what you need to do to kind of make sure that you maintain that competitive edge and are continued to be employable and a hot candidate for companies. So thanks, Pat, for joining. I think this is kind of fun. We'll see what the kind of reviews are on this, but I appreciate you kind of joining in. And stay tuned until next week. We'll probably uncover another really interesting use case of AI as it pertains to maybe managing stocks or using the new operator, which is AI's new agents.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Demystify Nation. We will see you next week.